Hey, camera only. Mark. Action!
If there really was a time machine like this movie, I think I'd get in it and go into the future.
I probably would like to travel into the future to see if this movie's going to be successful.
Jeez, I don't know what I'd do. Would I go forward? I think I'd probably go backwards, actually.
The West, you know, I have a fantasy about that. Everybody wants to be a cowboy. I wanted to be a Mountie, you know. I wanted to be like Dudley Do-Right.
I think I'd probably go back to the 50s.
We started writing the script of Back to the Future in September 1980, although we had the idea for a long time before that. We wrote 2 drafts, and we couldn't get the thing made to save our lives.
I just think the movie is so rich in story and so rich in sort of, you know, occurrence that I really liked it. I mean, it was all in the script, too. And I said, well, whatever happened to Back to the Future, that script you wrote 3, 4, or 5 years ago? Because I read it years ago.
Okay. Keep using that thing when you come out. In other words, my feeling about making a time travel movie was to, first of all, make a fun adventure. The reason we chose the 1950s was a simple logistics question. Our hero is 17 years old, and he has to go back to the time when his parents were 17 years old, and that just simply put us in the 50s. The second reason was that the 1950s was the birth of American teen culture. That was the first time that the teenager started to rule, and he's ruled ever since.
We figured that it's more fun to fool around with a time period which you're familiar with, which you know. And the 50s were great because we've all had the experience of looking through our parents' high school yearbook. There they are, there's mom, there's dad, but it's not. I mean, they don't look anything the same. They're skinny, they're beautiful. You say, no way.
It's a fantasy. I think all kinds of people wonder what it'll be like to see their parents when they're young.
It's like, you know, when you're a kid and your father and your mother tell you the things that they did as a kid, you know, like walking 12 miles to school and doing their homework on a shovel. You know, it'd be interesting to go back and see if it were really true. Like all mothers, Marty's mom told him that she grew up without any vices, and so when Marty goes back in time and sees her as a teenager, he's in for quite a shock.
Jesus, you smoke too?
Marty, you're beginning to sound just like my mother.
Okay, let's shoot. The most fun for me was having these young actors age and play 30 years older than they really are. Much more difficult than doing like 80 or 90 or 70 years old, because then you can get real decrepit and old. But when you're going from 17 to, say, 56 or 57, that's a real tough call for a young actor to do. So that was challenging, but it was also a lot of fun.
On the days that we have to be old, we have to go in early, and then they start laying this glue on our face, spirit gum, and putting on the pieces, and it takes hours and hours, and it smells bad. And then they start painting it. But by the time they start painting it, you start seeing this like living sculpture evolve. When I had my old makeup on, I drove home because my mom was staying with me, and walked in the door and said, "Hi, Mom," and she walked out and she went,
Mark? Action!
Well, when you walk onto that back lot, it's so perfect, it's so detailed. I mean, so much work has gone into it. It is 1955. I mean, you're there. You look around, and everywhere you look, you see the travel store, 10 Days in Cuba, you see the cars and everything. And it makes it very easy for the actor.
A film like this is very, very interesting because very few films have been done in this period as of this date. This is going back to a period that people think is too recent to become a period film, and yet we've tried to give it a real period look. One of the ways we're able to do that is to push the film visually back a little farther than 55. Because if we're right on in 55, what happens is that it almost looks a little too new. I use a great deal of photographic research. Usually I delve into a lot of Life magazines, Look